Hi brothers and sisters. I thought today we'd make a video on something that I don't think most of us really get. We really don't understand it. And I think largely because of 4 reasons, and I was guilty of this too, so don't think I'm pointing the finger at you. I can point it easily at myself. But one of 4 reasons I think we can give why we don't really understand the Jezebel spirit, which is what we're going to be discussing today. And it's either 1, because we're too dumb, 2, we're too lazy, 3, we're too afraid, and 4, we've been brainwashed. And so we just assume that what our men have determined the Jezebel spirit means, that must be so. But it's really not. Because they tend to teach, and this is the way a man thinks, this is not the way a woman thinks, because men and women think really totally different in a lot of ways. But my idea is that feminism and harlotry are total oppositions to one another. Feminism does not promote harlotry. What does promote it is a fake idea of feminism, and I'll prove that when we get to the end here. But the first thing that we really need to do, and my camera's gonna act up, it's been acting up, I was lucky to even get it up, okay? The first thing that we're really gonna do, and I do this every time, is we're gonna take a look at Jezebel. This is the first thing we're gonna do. Okay, and we're gonna try to understand just what that harlot spirit, or this Jezebel spirit, really was all about. Okay, was she about feminism? Does feminism even factor into this? It doesn't seem to even be in question here. The idea of a woman in power isn't questioned at all. But her actions is what I'm going to strongly go after and look at what she's really doing here and what Ahab is doing here. This is where we're going to get our full understanding of what the Jezebel spirit is really all about. So, verse 1, this is 1 Kings 18. And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Elijah went to show himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And Ahab called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. Verse 4. For it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid by 50 in a cave and fed them with bread and water. Okay. Let's keep going on here. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, Go into the land unto a fountain of water, and unto all the brooks, peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and the mules alive, that we lose not all the beasts. Verse 6. So they divided the land between them to pass through it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. Now, excuse me. And as Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him. And he knew him, and fell on his face, and said, Art thou that my lord Elijah? And he answered him, I am. Go tell thy lord, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, What? Have I sinned, that thou wouldest deliver thy servant into the hand of Ahab to slay me? So he's not saying Jezebel, he's saying Ahab here. So Ahab and Jezebel is obviously in cahoots, on the same mind here, doing the same, committing the same crimes. Alright, let's keep going here. As the Lord thy God liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord had not sent to seek thee. And when they said, He is not there, he took an oath of the kingdom and nation that they found thee not. And now thou sayest, Go tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And it shall come to pass as soon as I am gone from thee, that the Spirit of the Lord shall carry thee whither I know not. And so when I come and tell Ahab, and he cannot find thee, he will slay me. But thy servant fear the Lord from my youth. But I, thy servant, fear the Lord from thy youth. Was it not told my prophet what I did, when Jezebel slew the prophets of the Lord, how I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water? And now sayest thou, Go tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and he shall slay me. And Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts liveth, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself unto him today. Okay, now, we understand, firstly, this is the first thing we need to understand. Elijah and Obadiah is in opposition to Ahab and to Jezebel. All right. There's also another factor missing here, that as the power of Baal, Ahab, and men like Ahab, and the Jezebel spirit grows, that you will not find the female righteous spirit who is in covenant with Obadiah and Elijah. You will find her completely removed from the text. Now, we'll establish this in a minute. And it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, art thou he that troubled Israel? All right. And he said, I have not troubled Israel, but thou. Okay, so what's going on here? So Obadiah meant to meet Ahab and told him. And Ahab went to Elijah. Okay, so Ahab ends up talking to Elijah. And Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, art thou he that troubleth Israel? So what does Elijah say to Ahab? I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, of the true living God, and thou hast followed Balaam. What's Baal responsible for? Balaam responsible for? Baal. The exaltation of Baal. Why is that important? Well, for anybody who's following me, you ought to know why that's important. And the Harlot Spirit that Baal exalts in his heart was important to him because of why? Let's keep looking at what took place. Now therefore send and gather to me all of Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves. The prophets of the groves. That's el-berith. We'll show you that in a few minutes from now. 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. So why do these prophets eat at Jezebel's table? Why do they do that? Because it mentions the grove. And the grove, whether you're looking at it in a righteous sense, and there is a female grove that Abraham planted, and there he went out and worshiped the true living God. But here it states that the prophets from the grove ate at her table. So the Asherites ate at her table. These are going to be identified as the covenant of el-berith, which is their stronghold that Baal runs into in the book of Judges when Gideon pursues them to take them out of the land. So this is all connected to Baal worship, all right? Because we're bringing in Baal prophets, all right? So Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel, or Carmel. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, how long halt ye between two opinions? So we got two opponents in view here going on, all right? That's what we got going on. If the Lord be God, follow not him. God has never been a him. God became a him when the Baals got charge of the word. All right? This all testifies to this as the foundation, the false foundation that we built a lying theology upon, and then yoked women under the law and wrote this ridiculous division known as feminism into it. That was never even on God's radar. God says you are all equal in my kingdom. So where does the idea of feminism actually come from? Well, it came from Baal. That's where it comes from. That's where it originates from. And sons who are taught by fathers teach this. And this is proven over and over again for anybody who wants to go in and do their study. So I'm not doing a great job of this. but we're going to have a lot to look at, so I better get moving. Okay, so why halt ye between two opinions? If God be God, follow God. But if Baal, then follow Baal. And the people answered not a word. Then said Elijah unto the people, even I only remain a prophet of the Lord. Well, that's been disputed. We already know there were 7,000 that had not bowed their knee to Baal. And Baal, what's the definition of Baal? Well, we already identified the definition of Baal with the Strong's Hebrew 1167. It's derived from 1168, which is the Baal god. But this is where it began. The shaping of your husband as the image of God, as male and king. And so you get this word 1167, Baal, B-A-A-L, that derives from 1168, which is a masculine noun. It means owner and lord, archer, bridegroom, husband, master, all of that. All right? So we understand what we're up against here now with Baal, but do we understand the definition of Jezebel, which is who Ahab, known as the one in opposition, as a man of Baal, who was married to Jezebel, and what does her name mean? Baal exalts, or his husband too. So what did man come to exalt in his heart, as we came to understand in our studies? Well, he began to exalt the Harlot Spirit. And why did man begin to exalt the Harlot Spirit? Because she would do what? She would coddle him and teach him as God and work to exalt him. And this is exactly the spirit of the Jezebel in these two chapters once you go in and you identify it. So watch this. We're going to keep reading. So in Elijah, I also wanted to point to Isaiah 47, your harlot. What does she say? For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. This is the queen of Babylon. This is the harlot spirit, exalted in man's heart. And she says, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it has perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else. When you take away a woman's rights under the law, and God says, I am no respecter of person, and you take away a woman's right, and when she tries for her rights as an equal under the law, you call her a feminist. You want her to disappear, is what you want her to do. And this is precisely what the harlot spirit is saying here in Isaiah 47. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. A woman is not to be heard or listened to because she's a harlot. Oh, but he exalts the harlot in his heart. And she says, none seeth me. And what was Jezebel doing with Ahab? Well, Jezebel means Baal exalts. Why would Baal, Ahab, exalt Jezebel in his heart? Because she was doing something all men expect every woman to do. Coddle his ego and build his power, which is what she was doing. She was not building her own power. She was not a feminist. She wasn't out fighting for women's right. Guess whose rights she was building up? Her husband's. And you watch how he goes about building his power base and how she goes about doing it for him. Alright? So Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel and gathered all the prophets unto Carmel. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, how long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow Baal. Then if follow him. And if the people answered him, and the people answered him not a word, then said Elijah unto the people, even I only remain, which he did not. We know there was 7,000 that had not bowed their knee. We're told that in, I believe, Romans 11 as well. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks. Okay, 2 bullocks. We're going to get into how they wrote the eating, actually, of the flesh of an animal, i.e. a bull, of an animal into the law that had been sacrificed unto idols, false male idols, and they were sacrificed to male idols, is what they were sacrificed to. So it's interesting that here we have the Torah law that teaches this very thing that they're trying to say is the founding of the Torah, the temple, and all these festivals, which is all about the celebration of the sacrifice of a male and the shedding of that blood, and yet this preaches against it. Now, something's in total opposition here, total opposition, and we know it to be true because we've studied it on our other videos. So, let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood. Now you understand, this is the hard part to get through, people. The men of Baal have written this word using he as God. Alright? Over time, these men of Baal has gained power over our written word. This is why God says, the true living God, where your true living waters flow from, says, I wrote it on your heart. You ought to know who I am. I am not a God of various weights. I am a God of fairness and equal treatment to all. If you can't figure that out about God's character, then you are in serious trouble. So here we have them, 2 bullocks. Right. All right. Well, we'll go with that. Since the men of Baal wrote it in here, it must be so. And so what does he say? And cut it in pieces, lay it on the wood, and put no fire under it. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under it. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God that answereth by fire, let that one be God. I ain't saying him. God says, you saw no image of me, make no image of me. I am no respecter of the person. I am who I am. That means you don't limit me by form, and yet the men of Baal taught a male form, and you fall for it because you are one, either too dumb, too lazy, too weak-minded and afraid, or simply too brainwashed to go in and do the hard study. That's going to lead you to the deeper understanding of what this whole religious lie is founded upon, which is a lying foundation that daubs in the wall. We're going to get to that in a minute too. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God that answers by fire, let that be the God. Okay, and the people said, well spoken. So Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, choose you 1 bullock for yourself, and dress it first for ye are many, and call on the name of your gods, but put no fire under it. So we understand what was going on here. Alright? We're proving who God is here. It's either Baal or the God of Elijah. Alright? This is what they're trying to say. You understand the harlot spirit of Jezebel was to build up Baal. That's what she did. And that's proven by these 2 passages that we're taking a look at. That's precisely what she did. She was working to build her husband up as God and Lord and ruler of earth. And later on, she disappears. This is not a feminist. This is a harlot. That's what a harlot does. Build and coddle hubby up to be a god. And that's what her role was. You watch what the Jezebel does. And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it, and they called on the name of Baal from morning, evening, unto noon, and nothing happens. We get that. They were cutting themselves and everything. Baal had no power to do anything. So we keep going on. And they cut themselves until blood gushed out. There we go with the blood and the violence under the law that God required a sacrifice. God says, I never asked of you a sacrifice. I didn't ask that of you. I asked you to follow my laws peacefully. And she shows that through her only begotten son, because he was the only one who walked after her laws. And the way that he did that was to exalt the righteous spirit within his heart, known as daughter Zion, who is the actual adversary here. But you wouldn't know that because you don't want to go in and actually study to get the hard truth, because it might hurt his ears. And the funny thing about most women today is they're too wrapped up to exalting their husband to dare go in and say anything different of what he says is the truth. And well, you know, if I'm a good, godly little woman to my man, he's going to do this. Yeah, that's what they do. But the minute you go against them and they say, you ain't got the truth here. A Jezebel spirit is not a feminist. A Jezebel spirit is a harlot. And a harlot is in total opposition to a real woman and the respect that she asks for and actually deserves according to God's law, not man-made law. Man-made law will never give it to a woman. Never. And that's your men of Baal who claiming to be God and says, well, it comes from God. No, it never come from God. Never come from God to yoke a woman. You chose that yourself. And you exalted the harlot in your heart. And that's why it says the definition of her name means Baal exalts, or his husband too. And we know the one he married here is spoken of in Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear. That's the righteous daughter Zion, whom no man sought after. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, thou that does not travail with child. To have children means they're listening and hearkening to your laws and the truth. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife. Married wife here is Baal, saith the Lord. So he married Baal because Baal exalts the harlot in his heart, and he exalts the harlot in the heart because she exalts him as God and Lord and coddles and builds him up on this earth. You see this with the definition coddle. What does coddle mean? Treat in an indulgent or overprotective way. And unless you studied Jezebel's heart when it came to her beloved Ahab and what she was willing to do for him, you will not understand the spirit of Jezebel. You will not. You're going to listen to men of Baal telling you it's the feminist spirit. What a load of bull. And guess what that is? Baal's title is called Lord of Dung. It's a load of bull that he wrote himself, and you harlots called Jezebels build him up and coddle him and tickle his little ears. Yep, that's what they do. And so here we have evidence that this is precisely what the spirit of Jezebel is all about. You watch. So after this, we know what takes place. Elijah soaks down the altar. He keeps soaking it down and soaking it down. And he doesn't hardly have the words of his Lord out of his mouth before the fire comes and licks it clean up. You know why? You see, the women in Galatians 4 are allegorical to two covenants. That's what they're allegorical to. And one represents the harlot spirit. And this harlot spirit over time is completely made powerless because she chose to exalt her husband as her master and as her Lord. That's what she does, as proven by the spirit of the harlot Jezebel. But then we have the other woman known as the righteous spirit, who comes from above and is the mother of us all. That means the life giver, the one that truly gives life to you. And she is the one that has the power. And she is the one that, because the harlot caused all womankind to be hid, because she began to exalt Baal, her husband, and he takes control of the so-called living word. And we've proven that. But what happens? The righteous feminine completely disappears from view and all knowledge of her. And we've proven that. And we'll continue to prove it when we study. And that's what God says in Peter. It's in Peter. It's in the book of Peter. God says the way you bring on the day of the Lord is through hard study. It's not through repetition, doctrines that's been handed down from man to son and taught to his wife in a violent situation, because that's what it came to be in violence. We're told that in Malachi 2. He wrote violence against his wife under the law. Yet is she the wife of thy covenant, and not the one that you married, the daughter of a strange God. My God is my mother, who gave life to me and taught me her laws and her ways, that imputed no violence to anyone and allowed for equality amongst everyone. And yet, between the male and the female. And yet, we preach a God that absolutely is a God of various weights, and that does receive a blood sacrifice and demands it. That's the covenant with the harlot and fallen Adam that wrote Torah, and all of the ridiculous rituals that they put in practice as a male to continue to force the idea that God is male. That's what this all was about. It was brought over from the Exodus. We see this when they kept asking for the taste of flesh in their mouth. And God says, why do you want flesh in your mouth? I have given you the food of angels, manna. And it can taste salty or it can taste sweet. That's the design of it. And yet you require flesh in your mouth, bloodshed. That's what she's saying. You want me to take the life of an animal to fill your mouth because you are hungry for that. That's hungering for death. That's what that's really hungering for. And God says there's no death imputed in my laws. There's no violence in my laws. I never asked for blood. And yet, that's what the Torah law preaches. A blood sacrifice. And on the Passover, you must fill your mouth with all that meat before, daybreak? They had to eat it all up. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because God required a blood sacrifice. Nope. God says, I never required a blood sacrifice of you, ever. And yet, you continually disregard these verses. You disregard the truth of what the Jezebel spirit is telling you she is. We're going to keep looking at it. It just makes me so mad that people are so easily brainwashed and led astray and refuse to go in and reason out the truth themselves. And he said, do it the second time. They did it the second time. So this is them filling the altar with water for Elijah. And the water ran round about the altar and filled the trench with water. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, not God of any woman. No, because she is the God presence here on earth. We're told it repeatedly in the text for anybody who can reason it out, which you don't want to. Let it be known that this day that thou art God in Israel. We're talking about the daughter Zion and her power as the presence of God here on earth. Who was the one that Elijah was in covenant? Who was Baal in covenant with? Jezebel, because she was willing to exalt him as God and get rid of all knowledge of those righteous sons and the women that they exalted in their heart, where the true power of the living God came from. And we're told the living waters flowed from Lebanon. What are you talking Lebanon for? That's Zion, and it comes from Zion because they tore her temple down. We proved it. Hear me, O Lord, hear me. All right. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering. This is the power of the presence of God, identified as the camp of Mahanaim, the rejected outcast, whom no man sought after. Over time, they became a distant memory and then a distant nothing. because no one could see her, because over time the harlot spirit allowed herself and all womankind to be hid under the law and restrained and yoked. You can't reason it out, can we? So, hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood and the stones and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, The Lord, she is God. They would have known this at that time. The Lord, she is God, not he. Because Deuteronomy, I believe it's 4, says, You saw no image, you make no image of me. So if they were calling on the true living God or falling down, they certainly would not have said he. Yeah, you can argue, well, they wouldn't have said she either. You're right. But since we know that Jezebel's covenant and Baal's covenant were well known and in total opposition of the righteous covenant, then we have to assume that they knew they were going against the righteous daughters of Zion and their righteous sons that exalted them in their heart and their laws. And what does Job say in Job 30? I get this wrong every time. Job 31, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? Well, Ahab had a maid, and he married her. For what portion of God is there from above? The inheritance from the Almighty from on high. He's saying the wife of his original covenant. That's what he's saying. And these men would have known it. These women would have known it. Baal would have known it. El-berith, Jezebel would have known it. Elijah would have known it. And he would have known who he was exalting in his heart. We can't reason this out. It's just so hard. Oh my gosh. Yes, because you're listening to the men of Baal's lies and not going in and reasoning. And Elijah said unto Ahab, Get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of abundance of rain. Okay. So we can go on here. There's only 4 or 5 verses. Okay, so Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel and cast himself down upon his knees and put his face between his knees and said to his servant, Go up now, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked and said, There is nothing. And he said, Go again 7 times. And it came to pass that 7 times is an example of the sevenfold spirit. That's the covenant of the sevenfold spirit known as daughters, female, feminine. We've already identified that as such if you want to backtrack and watch some of my other videos. And it came to pass the 7th time that he said, Behold, there arises a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand. And he said, Go up, say unto Ahab, Prepare thy chariots, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds. And Ahab rode and went to Jezebel. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. Now, here's where we're going to understand the true nature of the Jezebel spirit. Right here. Okay, I gotta backtrack now. I had it up. What happened to my passage? I swear they just took it down. Okay. So it is. See, where did it go? Right there. No, maybe we'll go back. Sorry, folks. Okay. It never works out for me, ever. Okay. It's a fight. I am in a battle. I'm in a spiritual battle against my enemies. And the enemy, make no mistake, they're so clever. They got the wool pulled over your eyes. And nobody wants to see it. Okay, so, well, what'd they do? They just took it away? It was pulled up here, and now it's just totally gone. Okay, fine. We'll go in, and we will. Nope, I can't get rid of it. Okay. So we'll go to, this is where we're going to. And it was pulled up and now it's gone, of course. 1 Kings, so it'll screw my camera up. 21 parallel chapters is what I'm after. And this is where we prove the nature of Jezebel. Okay? And we're going to prove that she was indeed a harlot. That she was, if anything, as far removed from a feminist as a woman could be. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth, the Jezreelite, had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, and hard by the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. I'll get it. So this man owned a vineyard right next to the king's palace. Alright. And Ahab spake unto Naboth, saying, Give me thy vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house, unto my palace, and I will give thee for it a better vineyard than it. Or if it seem good to thee, I will give thee the worth of it in money. And Naboth said to Ahab, The Lord forbid it me, that I should give the inheritance of my fathers unto thee. And Ahab came into his house heavy. Now watch the nature of Ahab. He wants his ears tickled, is what he wants. He wants to taste the honey that his spouse is willing to offer him. And so this is watch the behavior, and this is the behavior of so many men. It's almost akin to a tantrum if I don't get my way. And that's the nature of Baal, your husband today, who wants to be your Lord and Master, and we will prove that in a minute. As we continue on, sorry, I keep saying minutes, but you know what I mean. Later on, we're going to prove it. And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth, the Jezreelite, has spoken to him. For he has said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed, and turned away his face, and he would not eat. Oh, he was sulking. He was sulking. He couldn't have what he wanted. So what? He tells this to his wife. But Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said unto him, Why is thy spirit so sad, that thou eatest no bread? Oh, what a feminist she is. You better watch out for these women, boys. You don't want these kind on your side, tooting your ego with that he in charge crap, do ya? No. She's a feminist. She's all for women. This isn't about exalting Baal as God and King. No, that's not what the Jezebel spirit's about. And he said unto her, Because I spake unto Naboth the Jezreelite, and said unto him, Give me thy vineyard for money, or else, if it please thee, I will give thee another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give thee my vineyard. So what? She tickles him. And Jezebel, his wife, said unto him, Dost thou not govern the kingdom of Israel? Are you not king? Arise and eat bread, and let thine heart be merry. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. Ooh! And he knew it. He knew what his sulking was going to get him. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters unto the elders and to the nobles that were in his city dwelling with Naboth. And she wrote in the letter, saying, Proclaim a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people. And set 2 men, sons of Belial. What does sons of Belial mean? Sons of darkness. It means 2 wicked men. It wasn't very hard for her to find wicked men, because that's who her covenant was with. Wicked men that exalts the harlot in their heart, so they can be exalted as gods on this earth. This is the simple teaching for anybody who has the reasoning ability and the desire to go in and search for the deeper truths, instead of listening to men going, oh, that Jezebel spirit, that feminist spirit. Oh, really? You could have fooled me. The fact that she was female didn't even enter into the conversations, because you see, women were viewed as equals under the law. But at this point, she was building Baal up, that in the course of time would lead to the eventuality that all women would be yoked under Baal's laws. Alright? This is what this all tells you. So, what does she do? And she found 2 wicked men opposite him, and had them testify against who? Naboth, saying, "You have cursed God and the king." Who was she really talking about as God and king here? She was talking about her husband, Baal. She wasn't being no feminist. What are you talking feminism here? We're talking harlotry here. And we're talking about a king that knew he had married a woman that was going to build him up and let him do what his little heart desired. Yeah, that's the Jezebel spirit. And you women who step up to play and teach that, oh, you women who are expecting equality under the law and dare think it's of God, you are playing the Jezebel spirit. Oh, no, we're not. You are. And this proves it for anybody who can study and reason it out. So she hires 2 wicked men who are willing to testify against a righteous man. And we don't even know whether Naboth had a wife. They erased all understanding of whether he was married. And certainly if he was married, she would have had no legal recourse to claim the stead as hers, because, well, they erased women's right over time. We're told that in the book of Esther, that the men of that every woman would bow to her Baal as Lord and Master, as decreed by the king there, who got upset with his wife who wouldn't bow to him and let a drunken king more or less drool over her. Well, she was just, oh, a woman can't do that. No, no, no. So we have further teachings of Baal suppressing the righteous spirit. That's what we have here. And so we have 2 wicked men testifying against Naboth, who might have been married. Had he been married, they would have either, Jezebel being a harlot that she was, probably would have handed her off to the men to do with what they want, or they would have sold her into slavery, or they simply would have killed her or executed her, or just run her off of the property. So that's kind of what Solomon is doing. And actually, this is going to come into play. What Solomon was doing when he was daubing up the walls. This is actually going to come in play in this chapter for anybody who's watched and understood what the key of David was about. So, and the men of his city, even the elders and the nobles who were the inhabitants in his city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them, and as it was written in the letters which she had sent unto them, and they proclaimed a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people. So was she a feminist? No. She was simply doing what her power would allow her to do, and the power came from God. The power came to Baal, to Ahab, by God. This was simply the structure and the order of things. And there came into men, so we're saying feminism doesn't even factor in here. Not in one iota does it factor in here. And there came in 2 men, children of Belial, and sat before him. That means children of darkness, children of wickedness. And the men of Belial witnessed against him, even against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth did blaspheme God and the king. So God and the king is basically her husband Baal. Then they carried him forth out of the city and stoned him with stones that he died. Excuse me. Then they sent to Jezebel, saying, Naboth is stoned and is dead. Watch 15. And it came to pass, when Jezebel heard that Naboth was stoned and was dead, that Jezebel says to Ahab, this is the feminist speaking to her husband, who she promised, don't worry, you're the king, you're the god of the land, you'll have what you want. This is the feminist. No, this is the harlot bowing to her husband. Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth, the Jezreelite, which he refused to give thee for money, for Naboth is not alive but dead. And it came to pass, when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, that Ahab rose up to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. So you see, Jezebel was a real feminist. Oh my gosh, do you even hear the ridiculousness of it? And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, Because you see, under God's law, all were equal. Men were not over women. But this teaching of the harlot spirit exalted in man's heart leads to the debasement of women and a yoke on her neck. Eyes go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is on the vineyard of Nebat, whither he has gone down to possess it. So, what is promised in this next verse? Watch what it says. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, in the place where dogs. There's an important word to look up, because you're going to understand the covenant of Baal and el-berith very clearly. Go look the word dogs up. Licked the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. This is the promise. That the dogs that licked Naboth's blood was going to lick Ahab's and Jezebel's. And we're going to look the word dogs up to get a better understanding of the covenant. So, and Ahab said to Elijah, Hast thou found me, O mine enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. So he sold himself. What was it all about? What's this man-made law all about? Making money. Making money. Shedding violence to keep making money. To make women afraid to dare to ask for rights because, you know, they're not gay from God. It's man that determines them. Oh no. We got this harlot Jezebel building a man up under the law to blame for how we did become eventually yoked by our husbands. You're right, you Jezebels out there. You better keep teaching your husband's laws. You better keep doing that. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone. And thou shalt speak unto him. And he says, the dogs will lick your blood and Jezebel's blood. And he says, Hast thou found me, O mine enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work in evil in the sight of the Lord. This is the building of man up with thick clay under the law. You look that verse up, you Google it, you put verse and say, Adam built himself up with thick clay, and it'll pull the verse up for you. That means he built himself up with riches under the law. He stole hers from her by saying women aren't equal under the law. He steals what does not belong to him. It says he will be forced to vomit it up. That means the lies of the harlot spirit on his tongue as honey, and tickles his ears, and his cobras venom in his stomach. It is killing him. And it does. It does in this chapter. And of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, The dog shall eat Jezebel by the wall. Oh, we got the wall coming into play here. Why is the wall important? Well, that's going to come in the next few verses. All right? Nope, not in the next few verses. We actually went by it. How did I miss that? It says, Behold, I will bring evil upon thee, and will take away thy posterity, and will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth, and it says pisseth, it's not me saying it, him that pisseth against the wall, saying, All your sons I'm going to cut off from you. That's the living God saying that. And she's going to cut his wicked sons off, along with Ahab, these men of Baal, who are exalted. Meaning of Jezebel, Baal exalts. Well, I think it's Baal exalted, because the harlot spirit gave Ahab exactly what he wanted, and threatened that the reason why Naboth had died was because he had blasphemed God and king. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And she was a feminist. Look at that. But watch this. And she says, I'll cut off you, Ahab, and all of your sons, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. Now, this next verse is vital in understanding, because for anybody who is with me and understands the key of David, this takes us right back to the key of David in Baal. This all takes us right back. Verse 22. And I will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha. I got to look into this one. Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for the provocation wherewith thou hast provoked me to anger, and made Israel to sin. And of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, the dog shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. There's that wall. Him that dieth of Ahab in the city, the dogs shall eat, and him that dieth in the fields shall the fowls of the air eat. Now, let's discuss. First off, verse 22 here in 1 Kings 21, 22. And will make thine house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Now, where does that take us to? Let's go to 1 Kings 11:27. Now, watch, it begins at verse 26 actually. So 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 26. And it's called Jeroboam's rebellion. Now, let us get our understanding straight on this. Now Jeroboam son of Nebat was an Ephraimite from Zereda, whose mother was a widow named Zeruiah. Jeroboam was a servant of Solomon, but he rebelled against the king. Oh my gosh, right there we see why he was so wicked. He was rebelling against the king. No, his rebellion was a good thing, because he was actually stepping up for his mother, who was a widow woman who actually possessed a house that Solomon had torn down, denying the women of Israel their rightful birthright, as it was known at the time. Now, watch what happens. Okay. And Jeroboam was a servant of Solomon, but he rebelled against the king. And this is the account of his rebellion. This is why he rebelled against King Solomon. Solomon had built the supporting terraces and repaired the gap in the wall. We got the gap in the wall. Oh my gosh, there's a hole. A bunch of holes in the wall. You know what those are called usually? Gates. That's what they're called. So he repaired the gates in the wall of the city of his father David. Now, this is what Jeroboam's house got torn down for, got completely destroyed, as spoken of in 1 Kings 22. This is the real reason. Now, Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, so when Solomon noticed that the young man was industrious, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph. You know what it's telling you he did? He bought off Jeroboam, so Jeroboam would shut up and let King Solomon do what he had purposed to do in his heart, which was to set up the Harlot Spirit that would teach his lies, which then becomes known as the flock in the midst, called Basra, whose portion is changed from a righteous spirit to a harlot spirit that would teach his lies. So he daubs up the gates. He tears down the houses of these righteous women who were the birthright holders because they held the law of truth in their mouth. And they were the ones that taught the sons the righteous laws of heaven that fed out to the nation of Israel, that kept them alive. And he tore these houses down, and it is explained to you in the book of Jeremiah in chapters, 6, 8, 9? And it says, you have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, And then God tells Jeremiah to go call on the cunning women, the wise women, and to mourn for the houses that had cast them out. That's an allegory to the righteous spirit being cast out of her rightful place to dwell, known as the pleasant land. And what did man do? He divides it into two covenants found in Galatians 4 as two women. So, we still not getting it. Not only does this 1 Kings 22, where we're talking about the Jezebel spirit and Ahab, Baal spirit, lead us here. This further takes us to Joseph's blessings in Isaiah 49. And what does it say? No, Genesis 49. What does it say if we're willing to actually study and do the hard reasoning and quit playing stupid and quit playing Jezebel's, the harlot Jezebel, to exalt him? What do we learn when we stop doing all of those things and stop being afraid of, altering those words of Baal? Oh, we better be afraid of that instead of finding the truth. And when we determine that we're not going to be brainwashed by their lies anymore, but we're going to find the truth through hard study and through the Spirit's leading, guess what we find out? Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches daughters climbed over the wall. Why did they climb over the wall? I'll tell you why they had to climb over the wall. Because Solomon had dogged it up and torn her houses down. And what does it say? The archers. Who was Baal called? Archers. And that's the exact name here. The Baals attacked her with bitterness, and they aimed at her with hostility. Still believing the Jezebel spirit is a feminist? I don't see her as a feminist at all. You know what I see her as? I see her as one who did this. Coddled. Treat in an indulgent or overprotective way. She coddled her man of Baal is what she did. Oh, what a good little woman she was. And she was no feminist. Guess what she really turns out to be, playing a harlot? She really turns out to be a masculinist, is what she is. And this is a real term. Masculinism or masculism is a counter movement to feminism that has functioned in Western countries since the 1980s. Masculinists identify themselves primarily, this is funny, primarily as men and as activists promoting the rights of men and fathers. Well, I can tell you something. You're not up against the righteous feminists demanding their equal law, their equal rights under God's laws. You're up against the harlot that Baal exalts in his heart. That's who they're really up against. They're not really up against the righteous feminine, which is what they want you to believe, that feminism is all just wicked, every bit of it. Oh no, no, no. They need that Jezebel spirit, because that Jezebel spirit coddles him and teaches the world that he's God, because she does nothing but exalts him. That's what she does. She builds him up. That's proven in these passages. She was not a feminist. I don't know how anybody can preach that she was a feminist. So, we'll keep reading here in 1 Kings 21. And we're going to look up the word dog. So, the house of Jeroboam come down. Alright, and this is the same one that went into Solomon and said, don't you dare tear my mother's house down and stop their gates, plug up their gates and stop them from coming and going. So Solomon said, oh, but you know, you're so smart, I think I'm going to make you... Oh, he gave him power. He handed him over power. And so we bring him into play. Now the next verse, it says, and of Jezebel also speaks the Lord, saying, the dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. The wall? Why the wall? Well, that's the same wall that got plugged up, forcing the righteous daughters to climb over the wall. They're called branches there. Go look the word up. Come on, do your homework. Daughters. The daughters had to climb over the wall because those men of Baal were shooting at them, saying, you don't have no rights. That's what they were saying. So Jezebel was not a feminist. She was a masculinist, is what she was. She was busy building hubby up and coddling him and tickling his ears and feeding him honey. But it was poisoning him. It was bringing on his own death because he actually wanted to exalt himself. That's what he wanted to do. And so, let's look the word dog up here. What does dog mean here? The dog that's going to lick her blood up? What's a dog? Hebrew 36:11. What's a dog? Oh, it's a masculine noun. And what else does it say? From an unused root means to yelp or else to attack. A dog, hence, by euphemism, is a male prostitute. A dog. Oh my gosh, what were they doing in Judges when Gideon went up against the men of Baal? Guess what they were doing? Because he had gotten the upper hand against these men of Baal, Gideon, because he was exalting the true God, which was found in who his covenant was with, which was with his righteous wife, the righteous spirit. That's what she's identified. And it says, on hearing this, okay, well, we'll start in 45. Judges 9, verse 45. And all that day Abimelech fought against the city until he had captured and killed it and its people. Now understand, Gideon is all part of all of this that's going on, all right? And so then he demolished the city, and he sowed it with salt. Look at that, we've got the salt coming in. So the reason why they sow it with salt is that nothing will ever grow back. So salt does not preserve or condition us from wickedness. It's to stop it from growing back. And you can do it in a righteous land just as well as in a harlot land, a bad land. And you can do it, you can cut it both ways. And the interesting thing is, in the new world that's to come, that's promised us, there is no ocean with salt, and all of the salt actually is going to be drained out of the oceans. According to Ezekiel, is it 47 or 48? It says all the marshland, as the ocean starts to break down into rivers, is going to be cleansed by the salt being dumped into the marshland. That's what it states. And these rivers is going to flow, and it says wherever these non-salted waters flow because they've been cleansed, it says life will flourish wherever they go. So the interesting thing, I just thought we'd throw that in there, because people love to say they're the salt of the world. Well, according to the end, there will be no salt. And we know that when we get too much salt, it causes our waters to be bitter, and it also will kill a person. Too much salt will absolutely destroy us. Then he demolished the city and sowed it with salt. Verse 46. On hearing of this, all the leaders of the tower of Shechem entered the inner chamber of the temple of, guess what it says? El-berith. Now, they don't want to tell you here, all right? You actually have to pull up this word to get el-berith to come into view. And the word is, let me get it here, 1285. And it means a covenant. All right, it's Hebrew 1285, and it's berith, and noun feminine, a covenant. And when you scroll down, it's going to say allied, allies, a covenant, el-berith, it'll say league and treaty. So these men were falling back in Judges to their stronghold. On hearing this, the citizens in the tower of Shechem went into the stronghold of the temple of el-berith. The stronghold of Judah was daughter Zion. That's his stronghold, which would have been Gideon's stronghold. And that was the true living God who had the true power on this earth. And then became the outcast that no man sought after. He began to seek a covenant with these women of el-berith, women like Jezebel, who would exalt a man and build him up as God and coddle him. That's what she did. She was as far removed from a feminist as you could get. And so, what does it say? On hearing this, the citizens in the tower of Shechem, actually it says the men, went into the stronghold of the temple of el-berith. That's your harlot, building him up. And he went there to get her protection. Just much like you see Ahab relying on Jezebel for his protection. That's what you got. And then you see this harlot in Isaiah 47, and she saw to it that her ways would bring on the none seeing me aspect of the feminine. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it has perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. So we know that the cutting away of the foreskin was a symbol that the man would not hearken after a covenant with the Harlot Spirit that would exalt him and the laws that he wanted exalted. It was a promise to Mother God when Abraham removed the foreskin that he would indeed exalt the righteous spirit and her laws. And so here we have our full understanding of what the Jezebel spirit was truly about. She was about playing man's harlot and exalting Baal, your husband, who wants to be your Lord and Master, who is shooting at the women who had to climb over the wall to their rightful birthright because the men of Baal were shooting at them and denying them their rightful place. And so now we understand, don't we? Just a little bit better, hopefully. And it's the same with Revelations. It's a continuation, and God is trying to point you into something. You are exalting yourself when you tolerate women that will teach and mislead my servants into sexual immorality, exalting a man as God and saying that he has all the power over his wife will lead to sexual immorality every time. And furthermore, the eating of food sacrificed to idols. This began the building up of man as God. That's what we have today. Christ was sacrificed. Well, the first part of that was the Torah law that stated a bull must be sacrificed. It must be. And then they taught the eating of it. They did so. So this all leads us back to this original teaching that led, not the original teaching, but to the lie that caused our downfall and caused our world to be founded upon a religious lie. It's an absolute lie. That's what it is. Now, I want to talk about one other thing before I leave. And I know I was intense, and I was intense for a reason, because I am fed up of women turning on other women who are trying to study the Word and get to the truth, and they can't stand it because hubby's whispering in their ear because they ain't got a brain of their own to go in and study. And I'm just so tired of these Jezebel videos from Baal. And from these harlots who's willing to exalt a man as God. You better go study the Word if you truly believe in it. So, we have also this. I can't help but read this in so many comments. I'm getting so I read less and less. I'm so sick of the comments because nobody has the ability to reason anymore. But they'll say, abortion, 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 abortion. Can I tell you something? There's three main reasons why we have abortion so prevalent in the land. And until you are able to identify these 3 reasons, you will never take abortion out of the land. And you want to know the good reason why? Because these are rights given to Baal under the law. And these rights, in order to get rid of the abortion problem that we have so prevalent in our nations, you're going to have to attack these 3 laws of right given to men. And you can say women all you want. The first one you need to get rid of is pornography. The second one you need to get rid of is prostitution. And the third one you need to get rid of is rape and pedophilia, legalized under the law. When these cases are brought forth, what few have the nerve to bring them forth? 95%, is it? I hadn't looked the number up. Walk free. Until you determine to attack these issues, you are always going to have the issue of abortion in your land. So you better get down to the heart of the real problems that are going on right now. And few people seem able to reason it out. They don't want nothing to do with reasoning today. It's flew the coop. It's gone. Well, you women of Jezebel, I hope you wake up. I don't know, maybe you can't wake up. Maybe it's impossible. But any study, if you study what the key of David is, and how it links back to actually the spirit of Jezebel and Ahab, I mean, you can play stupid. He can play stupid. You can play stupid. Go for it. I wouldn't want to be you. And that's what studying does. It'll lead you down the path of truth, not a lie. When you determine to say, look, I'm not listening to what you tell me it is. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the hard study, and I'm going to ask the Spirit of the Lord to lead me down the path of truth on this. And for anybody who says Jezebel was a feminist, oh my gosh, did you even read it? Did you even read it? I have to wonder. I mean, my gosh, you couldn't sound any dumber calling Jezebel a feminist. You couldn't be any dumber. And I was on that path. That's why I can get away with calling you stupid, because I was stupid. Until I just finally picked my head up and I said, Lord, there is something seriously wrong here. You are a God of love and of fairness and equity. Why do I feel so small? These are the reasons why. Until you are willing to go in and do the hard study and to change your thinking and realize how manipulated you have been, you will not open your eyes and you will not pick up your head. And God tells us that's precisely what the behemoth does. When Israel, the remnant, and we've discussed who they are finally working and pulling together in a manner that they ought to be doing, it says, no snare can ensnare her nose. They can't lock her in a barb, in a lie. And because she's wisdom. And it says she believes she can drink up the river Jordan. And it also links us back to Psalm 10 and that Lord picking her head up. Finally picking her head up. And realizing the power that she does have from God above. And until she recognizes that, God's going to leave her land. But once she realizes it, God's going to take possession of that land. And that means the Holy Spirit coming upon us in full. So, I know I got intense, and I feel intense about this. I have read Jezebel so much, I'm sick of it. And it's just a debasement. It's just a continued debasement of any woman who tries to understand the truth through any other means and through her husband's teachings. So, any of you watch my video, I thank you very kindly. Despite I may leave it as such, I may have to modify it. I may have to edit it. I did get really intense. I hope you're blessed with an abundance of truth and a willingness to open your eyes and to pick your head up. That's truly what I hope you are blessed with from the Holy Spirit. And so again, I thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a really nice day.